The rain-slicked streets of Itaewon pulsed with the after-hours energy of Seoul's nightlife. A chaotic blend of neon signs flickering in Hangul and English, spilling red and blue light onto the narrow alleys. It was late summer, the humid air thick with the scent of street food vendors packing up their carts, tteokbokki steam mingling with the metallic tang of impending monsoon. Tourists and locals alike hurried under black umbrellas, their footsteps splashing in shallow puddles that reflected the glow of high-rise apartments towering over the district. But deeper in the back alleys, away from the main drags lined with trendy bars and hookah lounges, the underbelly of the city revealed itself, graffiti-scarred walls, overflowing dumpsters, and the occasional shadow of a deal going down in hushed tones. Ji-yoon huddled against the brick wall of a shuttered pojangmacha tent, her thin jacket doing little to ward off the chill that seeped through despite the muggy night. At 22, she was no stranger to these streets. Orphaned young after a car accident claimed her parents in the crowded chaos of Gangnam traffic, she'd bounced between foster homes until she aged out, landing in Itaewon's fringes where the rent was cheap and the jobs, waitressing, cleaning, kept her scraping by. Her dark hair, tied back in a practical ponytail, was damp from the drizzle, and her eyes, sharp and wary, scanned the alley for any sign of trouble. She worked late shifts at a nearby Noribang, belting out old trot songs for tips from drunken salarymen, but tonight she'd cut out early, her boss's leering gaze too insistent. A low groan cut through the patter of rain. Ji-yoon froze, her heart thudding. It came from behind a stack of soggy cardboard boxes, near the mouth of an even narrower passage where the lights barely reached. She should walk away. Everyone knew better than to poke into Itaewon's shadows. This was territory for the gangs, the ones who ran the underground gambling rings and protected the high roller clubs with iron fists. But the sound was human, pained, and something in her, maybe the echo of her own loneliness, pulled her forward. Peering around the boxes, she saw him, a man, sprawled against the wet pavement, his black suit torn and bloodied at the shoulder. His face was half turned away, but even in the dim light she could tell he was handsome in a rugged way. Strong jawline shadowed by stubble, hair matted with rain and sweat. A tattoo peeked from his collar, intricate lines of a dragon coiling up his neck, marking him as no ordinary drunk. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and viscous, mixing with the rainwater. He clutched his side, breaths ragged, eyes fluttering half open. "Hey, you okay?" Ji-yoon whispered, kneeling beside him despite the warning bells in her head. Up close, he smelled of expensive cologne, undercut by coppery blood and gunpowder. A pistol lay discarded inches from his hand, its barrel still warm. His eyes snapped open, dark and piercing, locking onto hers with the intensity that made her breath catch. "Get away," he rasped in Korean, his voice gravelly from pain. "Not safe." She ignored him, her hands hovering uncertainly. "You're bleeding bad. Hospital?" "No." The word was a growl, final. He tried to push himself up, but winced, collapsing back. "Rivals. They'll finish me." Ji-yoon bit her lip, glancing down the alley. The rain picked up, drumming harder on the metal awnings overhead. She wasn't naive. She'd heard the whispers about the syndicates, the Incheon dragons, the Busan tigers, controlling everything from port smuggling to the glittering casinos in Gangnam. This man reeked of that world, power and danger woven into his very presence. But leaving him here felt wrong, like abandoning the stray cats she sometimes fed behind her tiny Goshiwon apartment. "Fine, no hospital." She shrugged off her jacket, pressing it against his wound to staunch the flow. He flinched, but didn't pull away, his gaze never leaving her face. Up close, she saw the fine lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the subtle scar above his brow, marks of a life hard-lived. "Why?" "Help," he murmured, his breathing steadying slightly under the pressure. Ji-yoon met his stare, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Because no one helped me when I needed it, and you look like you could use a hand." He let out a weak chuckle, cut short by a cough. "Brave or stupid, girl?" "Ji-yoon," she corrected, tying the jacket's sleeves around his shoulder in a makeshift bandage. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold until she could get him somewhere dry. Her mind raced, Her place was too far, too exposed. There was that old warehouse nearby, abandoned since the last developer scam, tucked behind the Itaewon market. It was risky, but better than the street. With effort, she helped him to his feet, his arm heavy over her shoulders. He was taller than she'd thought, broad-shouldered, leaning on her more than she expected. "Kang Min-ho," he said suddenly, as if deciding she deserved his name. "Remember it. If I live, you owe me nothing. If I don't, run." They stumbled through the alley, rain sluicing down their faces. Minho's weight dragged at her, but she gritted her teeth, navigating the puddles and discarded soju bottles. The warehouse loomed at the end of the block, its rusted door creaking open under her push. Inside, the air was musty, lit only by slivers of light from cracked windows. She eased him onto a pile of tarps in the corner, the scent of damp concrete and old wood enveloping them. Kneeling again, Ji-eun peeled back the jacket to assess the damage. The bullet had grazed him, tearing through muscle but missing bone. A lucky miss, or maybe not so lucky for whoever did this. "You need stitches," she said, rummaging in her bag for the small first aid kit she carried everywhere, a habit from patching up co-workers' bar fights. Min-ho watched her, his expression unreadable. "You're no nurse." "Close enough. Learned from YouTube and too many late nights." She threaded a needle with steady hands, the rain outside a relentless roar. As she worked, stitching the wound with careful pulls, he didn't flinch, but his eyes softened, tracing the determination in her face. "Why an alley like this?" she asked, breaking the silence to distract them both. The needle tugged through skin and she winced more than he did. Meeting gone wrong. Rival crew from Uedo, corporate suits with knives out for our turf. His voice was stronger now, laced with bitterness. "In this business, trust is a luxury. Tonight, it cost me." Ji-eun tied off the last stitch, bandaging it with gauze from her kit. "Business sounds like a war." "It is." He shifted, testing the arm, and for the first time, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But you, pulling me from the gutter, that's not nothing." She sat back on her heels, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. The warehouse felt smaller now, intimate in the dimness, the storm raging outside like an omen. Min-ho's hand brushed hers as he adjusted the bandage. Unintentional, but the touch lingered, warm against her chilled skin. In that moment, amid the shadows of Seoul's hidden world, something shifted. A spark of connection, fragile and unforeseen in the heart of danger. By dawn, the rain had eased to a drizzle, but Min-ho's men would come looking soon. Ji-eun didn't know it yet, but her act of mercy had just entangled her in a web of loyalty, betrayal, and a love that could either save them or destroy everything. As the first grey light filtered in, she met his gaze again, unaware of the Syndicate's eyes already turning toward the girl who had dared to save their boss. The first hints of dawn crept through the warehouse's cracked windows, painting the dusty air in pale greys and golds. Ji-eun wiped her hands on her jeans, the metallic scent of blood still clinging to her skin, despite the makeshift wash in a puddle outside. Min-ho sat propped against the wall, his breathing steadier now, but his face was drawn, shadows under his eyes deepening the lines of fatigue. The storm had passed, leaving behind a humid stillness that made the air feel heavier, like the city itself was holding its breath. She glanced at him, this stranger whose life she'd stitched back together with trembling hands. Kang Min-ho. His name echoed in her mind, carrying the weight of secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. "You should rest," she said softly, her voice echoing faintly off the concrete floors. "Your people. They'll find you, right?" He nodded, but his eyes were distant, scanning the shadows as if expecting ghosts. "They will, but not before the others do." The words hung between them, laced with the unspoken threat of the rival crew from Uedo, the ones who'd put a bullet in him during what he'd called a meeting. "Corporate sharks," he'd muttered earlier, hiding their blades behind boardroom smiles, encroaching on the dragon's smuggling routes through Incheon's ports. Ji-eun stood, stretching her aching back. The warehouse was a relic of Itaewon's boom-and-bust cycles, its walls tagged with faded graffiti of hanji patterns, twisted into gang symbols. Empty crates from long-gone shipments loomed like silent sentinels, and the faint drip of residual rain from the roof punctuated the quiet. She'd hidden here once before, after a bad shift when her boss had grabbed her wrist too hard. But this felt different. Charged, like stepping into a live wire. A low rumble outside shattered the calm. Engines, multiple, growling to life in the alley. Minho tensed, his good hand instinctively reaching for the pistol she'd tucked into his belt. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low and commanding, the boss emerging through the pane. Ji-un's pulse raced. She peered through a grimy window, spotting 3 black sedans idling at the warehouse entrance, their tinted windows reflecting the morning light. Men spilled out, tough, suited figures with earpieces and bulges under jackets that screamed concealed weapons. They moved with precision, fanning out like wolves scenting blood. One of them, a burly type with a shaved head and a scar across his cheek, barked orders in rapid Korean. "Boss, you in there?" The door rattled as they tested it, the rusted chain she'd looped earlier giving way with a metallic groan. Minho rose unsteadily, leaning on a crate for support. "It's them, my crew." Relief flickered in his eyes, but it was short-lived. He turned to her, his expression hardening. "You need to go now before they see you." "Why?" She stepped closer, defiance sparking in her chest. The night had bound them in some inexplicable way, his vulnerability, her quiet strength, and she wasn't ready to vanish into the dawn like a forgotten dream. "Because this world doesn't mix with yours," he said, his hand gripping her arm gently but firmly. Up close in the softening light, she saw the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the subtle tension in his jaw. "You're clean, stay that way." The door burst open with a crash, and the men poured in, guns drawn, faces etched with worry, turning to grim relief as they spotted Minho. The scarred one, Jae-sung, she later learned, rushed forward, slinging Minho's arm over his shoulder. "Hyung-nim, we thought. The scouts said Uedo's dogs hit the meat hard. Park's dead, and the shipment's compromised." Minho waved off the details, his gaze flicking back to Ji-un. The others noticed her then, their eyes narrowing, suspicious, assessing. A younger one, lanky with tattoos snaking up his arms, stepped forward. "Who's the girl? She with them?" "Back off, Tae-woo," Minho snapped, authority cutting through the air like a blade. "She saved me, pulled me from the alley and patched me up. Without her, I'd be cooling in the Han River." The warehouse fell silent, the men's stares shifting from hostility to something akin to awe. Jae-sung bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect in their rigid hierarchy. "Then we owe you, Agassi. Name it. Money, protection, whatever." Ji-un shook her head, uncomfortable under their scrutiny. The humid air felt thicker now, charged with the scent of wet asphalt wafting in from outside. "I don't want anything, just get him help. Real help." Minho's lips curved in a faint, appreciative smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Take me to the safe house in Gangnam, and her, escort her home. No questions." As they bundled him toward the cars, Ji-un hesitated. The pull was magnetic, this man who'd crashed into her life like a storm. She followed them out into the alley, the morning sun breaking through low clouds, casting long shadows on the puddles. Itaewon was waking, vendors firing up grills for fresh hoe, salarymen shuffling to the subway with briefcases in hand. But for her, the world had tilted. Jae-sung offered her a ride, his sedan idling smoothly. She slid in, the leather seats cool against her skin, the air heavy with the faint aroma of cigarette smoke and cologne. As they pulled away, she caught a glimpse of Minho in the lead car, his profile stark against the window. He turned, their eyes meeting through the glass for a heartbeat. Intense, promising more than words could. The drive to her Goshiwon in the fringes of Itaewon was short, the city unfolding in a blur of high-rises and street art. Jae-sung dropped her off without a word, but slipped a card into her hand. A plain black one with a dragon emblem and a number. "For when you need us, or him." Inside her cramped room, bare walls, a single hot plate, and a futon that smelled of instant ramen, Ji-un collapsed, the events replaying like a fever dream. Her hands still trembled, not from fear, but from the echo of his touch, the way his voice had softened when he said her name. She'd saved a Mafia boss, and in doing so, cracked open a door to a world of shadows and silk. But as the day wore on, The humid summer heat pressing in through her tiny window. Doubt crept in. Whispers from the street below reached her ears, rumors of a gang war brewing. Dragons versus the Uedo upstarts over a botched arms deal at the ports. Minho's wound was just the start. Retaliation would come swift, bloody. By evening, as thunder rumbled again on the horizon, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered, heart pounding. "Ji-eun," Minho's voice rough but alive. "You did more than save me. You have my debt. Dinner. Tomorrow. Somewhere safe." She paused, the rain starting to patter against the glass. Danger hummed in the line, but so did something warmer, desire, unspoken. "Okay," she whispered. "But no alleys." His chuckle was low, genuine. "Deal." In the gathering dusk, as Seoul's lights flickered to life, Ji-eun felt the web tightening. Loyalty to a syndicate, the pull of a man forged in fire, and the fragile bloom of romance amid the storm. What she'd done in that alley had set everything in motion, and bowing heads were just the beginning. The real test of hearts, hierarchies, and hidden betrayals lay ahead. The humid haze of late summer clung to Seoul like a second skin, the air thick with the promise of another downpour as evening descended over Gangnam. Towering skyscrapers pierced the twilight sky, their glass facades reflecting the golden glow of luxury boutiques and high-end restaurants that catered to the elite, politicians, chaebol heirs, and those who pulled strings from the shadows. Ji-eun stepped out of the subway at Sinanhyeon Station, her simple black dress, a thrift find from Dongdaemun Market, feeling out of place amid the parade of designer heels and tailored suits. She clutched her bag tightly, the black dragon card from Jae-sung burning a hole in her pocket. Dinner with a Mafia boss. What was she thinking? A sleek black Mercedes idled at the curb, its engine purring softly. The driver, a stern-faced man in a crisp shirt, nodded without a word and held the door open. Ji-eun slid in, the leather interior cool and scented with sandalwood. As they glided through the bustling streets lined with valet stands and glowing Hanok-inspired facades masking modern opulence, her mind raced. Minho's call the night before had been brief, his voice a gravelly anchor in the storm of her thoughts. 7 sharp. I'll send a car. No details, no explanations, just that quiet command that made her stomach twist with equal parts fear and anticipation. The car pulled up to a discreet entrance off a side street, away from the main drag of Apgujong's glamour. A neon sign in elegant Hangul read Han River View, but Ji-eun knew from the whispers of her Noribang co-workers that this was no ordinary spot. It was a syndicate haven, owned by the Dragons, where deals were sealed over aged soju and wagyu steaks far from prying eyes. The doorman, broad-shouldered with a subtle earpiece, scanned her face before waving her through. Inside, the air was dim and intimate, jazz-infused trot playing softly from hidden speakers, the scent of grilled sanma fish and fresh kimchi wafting from the kitchen. Minho waited at a corner booth, partially screened by bamboo partitions that overlooked the Han River's dark expanse. He rose as she approached, his bandaged shoulder hidden under a fitted black shirt, unbuttoned just enough to reveal the edge of that dragon tattoo. The wound had left him paler, but his posture was straight, commanding, a man who bent the world to his will, not the other way around. "Ji-eun," he said, his voice warm yet edged with caution. He gestured to the seat across from him, pulling it out with a courtesy that felt both genuine and calculated. "You clean up well," she replied, sliding in, her cheeks flushing under his gaze. The table was set simply, banchan platters of pickled radish and seasoned spinach, a bottle of makgeolli chilling in an ice bucket. No ostentation, but the quality screamed money, real underworld money. He chuckled, low and rumbling, pouring her a glass. "So do you, though I preferred the alley version, blood and all. More honest." His eyes, dark and intense, held hers as he sat, the faint scar above his brow catching the low light. Up close, without the rain and chaos, she saw the wear of his life. Faint lines from sleepless nights, a jaw set against constant threats. They clinked glasses, the rice wine sharp and cool on her tongue. Conversation started haltingly, small talk about the weather, the monsoon season's relentless grip on the city. But as the appetizers arrived, tender bulgogi wrapped in crisp lettuce, Minho steered it deeper. My men. They've been talking about the girl who dragged their Hyungnim from the gutter. Jae-sung wants to assign you protection. Tae-woo's already calling you Nuna, like your family. Ji-un laughed, a nervous sound that eased the tension in her shoulders. Family? I stitched you up with a YouTube tutorial. Hardly hero material. She picked at a piece of japchae, the noodles slick with sesame oil, avoiding his stare. The river outside shimmered under the city lights, boats gliding like ghosts, but the booth felt worlds away, sealed, safe, yet humming with unspoken dangers. You're more than that, he said quietly, his fork pausing. In our world, loyalty is everything. Betrayal gets you a shallow grave in the mountains outside Busan. What you did. It wasn't just saving a life. It was defying the odds. The Uedo crew, they're not like us. Corporate vipers laundering through tech startups but hungry for our ports. Last night's hit was a message. Park, my lieutenant, didn't make it, and now they're sniffing around Itaewon, thinking I'm weak. His words hung heavy, the weight of hierarchy pressing in. Ji-un glanced at the other patrons, discreet groups in suits, low murmurs over grilled meats, but she sensed the undercurrent, eyes watching, loyalties tested. And you? What's your message back? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The romance of the moment, the candle flicker on his face, the way his hand brushed hers when passing the soy sauce, clashed with the raw edge of his reality. Minho leaned forward, his expression softening, vulnerability cracking the boss facade. Retaliation, swift, but calculated. We hit their warehouse in Incheon tomorrow. Disrupt the flow. He paused, studying her. I shouldn't be telling you this. But you see me, not the title. No one's done that in years. Her heart thudded, the humid air outside seeping through the vents, carrying the faint rumble of thunder. She reached across, her fingers lingering on his. Then let me see more, not just the war. He covered her hand with his, calluses rough from years of handling more than ledgers, knives, triggers. The touch ignited something, a spark amid the danger, desire coiling tight. Careful, Ji-un. This life tests everything, love included. His thumb traced her knuckles, gentle, promising depth she wasn't sure she could navigate. The main course arrived, steaming hemulpageon, its edges crisp and golden, breaking the intensity. They ate in companionable silence at first, then shared stories, her foster home scraps, scraping by on tips. His rise from Busan's docks, Orphan too young, clawing up the Syndicate ranks through blood and cunning. Laughter came easier, his rare smiles lighting the dim space, but shadows lingered. Midway through, his phone buzzed, a terse message from Jae-sung. Scouts report movement near the safe house, Uedo Tail. Minho's face hardened, pocketing it without reply. Nothing, he lied smoothly, but Ji-un saw the flicker, betrayal's spectre, perhaps from within, as syndicates often fractured under greed. As dessert, sweet hotteok drizzled with honey wrapped up, he walked her to the door, his hand at the small of her back, protective. The night air hit like a wall, muggy and electric, distant lightning forking over the river. This isn't over, he murmured, close enough that his breath warmed her ear. Dinner was safe. Next time, riskier. Ji-un turned, meeting his gaze. The pull undeniable. Tension, desire, the thrill of forbidden ground. I'm not running, Minho. But as the car pulled away, carrying her back to her Goshiwon, doubt gnawed. The Syndicate bowed to her now, heads low in gratitude, but the war brewed hotter. Rivals closing in, loyalties fracturing, and a romance blooming in the crossfire. One wrong step, and it could all shatter like monsoon glass. In the rear view, Gangnam's lights blurred, but his touch lingered, a promise and a peril intertwined. The real storm was just beginning. The humid night air wrapped around Ji-un like a damp shroud as the Mercedes slipped through Gangnam's glittering veins, the city's pulse throbbing with late-night energy. Streetlights cast elongated shadows on the sidewalks. where clusters of office workers spilled from izakayas, their laughter cutting through the distant hum of traffic on the elevated expressway. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, replaying Min Ho's parting words, his breath warm on her ear, the firm press of his hand at her back. Desire simmered low in her belly, tangled with the sharp edge of fear. This wasn't some harmless flirtation. It was a dive into waters teeming with sharks. Back in her goshiwon, the tiny room felt even smaller, the walls closing in under the weight of the day's humidity. She kicked off her shoes, the faint scent of rain-soaked concrete seeping through the cracked window as thunder grumbled on the horizon. Her phone lay silent on the futon, but sleep evaded her. Instead, images flickered. Min Ho's scarred hand over hers, the dragon tattoo curling like a warning, the way his eyes had darkened when he spoke of retaliation. By midnight, exhaustion pulled her under, but her dreams were restless. Alleys bleeding into high-rises, his voice calling her name amid gunfire. Dawn broke sticky and overcast, the summer sun struggling through a veil of clouds that promised more rain. Ji-eun dragged herself to her shift at the Noribang, the familiar clang of karaoke machines and haze of cigarette smoke a grounding routine. But her mind wandered, replaying fragments of their dinner, the shared stories, the unspoken pull. Co-workers noticed her distraction, teasing her about a mystery date. But she brushed it off with a forced smile. By afternoon, as the first fat drops splattered the Itaewon streets, her phone buzzed. Not Min Ho, but Jae-sung's number. Agassi, it's Jae-sung. Boss wants you at the safe house. Now, something's come up. His voice was clipped, urgent, the background noise of engines and muffled shouts filtering through. Her stomach dropped. What happened? Is he okay? Just come, we'll explain. The line went dead. Heart-pounding, Ji-eun grabbed her jacket and dashed into the drizzle, hailing a cab to the address on the dragon card, a nondescript high-rise in Uido, the financial district where glass towers loomed like sentinels over the Han River. The ride blurred past construction sites and bustling markets, the rain intensifying into a steady sheet that turned the roads into mirrors. Uido was a far cry from Itaewon's gritty charm, polished, corporate, with suited executives hurrying under umbrellas, oblivious to the undercurrents of power plays beneath the surface. The building's lobby was sterile, all marble and security cams, but the elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending into another world. Jae-sung met her at the door, his scarred face grim under the fluorescent lights. Inside, quick. He ushered her into a sprawling space that screamed controlled luxury, sleek black furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the storm-lashed river, and walls lined with abstract ink paintings that hid safes and screens. The air smelled of fresh coffee and gun oil, a stark contrast to the downpour outside. Min Ho stood by the window, phone to his ear, his back to her. He ended the call with a curt nod, turning as she entered. Bruises bloomed along his jaw, fresh from whatever had transpired overnight, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing more tattoos, symbols of rank etched in black ink. Ji-eun, you came. Relief softened his features, but tension coiled in his shoulders, the boss masking vulnerability. What happened? She asked, stepping closer, the carpet muffling her footsteps. Rain hammered the glass, blurring the cityscape into a watercolor of greys. He gestured to the couch, where Tae-woo and a few others hovered, maps and laptops spread out like war plans. The hit on their Incheon warehouse, it went south, worse than south. His voice was low, edged with frustration. We disrupted the shipment, arms from the ports, but one of our own tipped them off. Betrayal. Park's death wasn't random. It was inside. Ji-eun sank onto the edge of the seat, the weight of it sinking in. The Syndicate's hierarchy, so rigid and revered, was fracturing. Loyalty, the glue holding it together, now poisoned. Who? Min Ho's eyes met hers, dark with the storm's fury. Not sure yet. But it cost us 2 men. And now they're retaliating. Hit a club in Hongdae last night, our protection racket. Message clear. They're coming for everything. He paced, the room's dim lighting casting shadows that accentuated the lines of exhaustion on his face. The others deferred to him, heads slightly bowed, but she saw the undercurrent, whispers of doubt, the fear of a crumbling empire. Tae-woo cleared his throat, glancing at her uneasily. "Boss, she shouldn't be here. This is Syndicate business." Minho shot him a glare that silenced the room. "She saved me. Well, that makes her one of us, more than some." He turned back to Ji-un, his expression softening as he knelt before her, taking her hands in his. They were warm, steady despite the chaos, calluses rough against her skin. "I didn't want to drag you in deeper, but after last night, I needed to see you, to warn you if they find out about the alley, about us." "Us?" The word escaped her, charged, hanging in the humid air that seeped through the vents. He searched her face, thumb tracing her palm, the touch electric amid the tension. "Yeah, us. What started in that warehouse? It's not nothing. But this world, it devours the weak. And now, with a rat in the ranks, every shadow's a threat." Ji-un's breath caught, desire warring with the raw fear knotting her chest. The rain outside intensified, wind rattling the windows like an angry fist. She leaned in, her free hand cupping his jaw, feeling the stubble, the pulse beneath. "Then let me help. Not as some outsider. I know streets, faces. Itaewon's full of ears." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, then admiration. He rose, pulling her up with him, their bodies close in the charged space. The others averted their eyes, respecting the moment, the hierarchy bending to this fragile bond. "You're braver than half my crew," he murmured, his lips brushing her forehead, a promise sealed in the storm's roar. Passion ignited, his arms encircling her waist, drawing her into a kiss that tasted of coffee and desperation. Deep, urgent, the world narrowing to the heat between them. But the moment shattered with a sharp knock. Jae-sung burst in, face ashen. "Boss, scouts spotted a tail. Uedo's moving on the penthouse, now." Minho pulled back, his eyes hardening to steel. "Evacuate, get her out first." He turned to Ji-un, the romance eclipsed by danger, but the spark lingered, fueling his resolve. "Go, I'll handle this." As alarms blared faintly and the crew mobilized, Ji-un gripped his arm, heart racing. "Not without you." The penthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a trap, the river below churning under the deluge. Betrayal's blade hung poised, testing their bond in the fire of impending violence. She wasn't just the girl from the alley anymore. She was in the heart of it, love forging her into something unbreakable, or doomed. The elevator doors slid shut behind her, and Jae-sung descending into the storm-swept streets. But Minho's kiss echoed, a lifeline amid the gathering tempest. The Syndicate bowed to her mercy once. Now survival demanded more. The rain lashed against the Uedo high-rise like a vengeful spirit, turning the Han River into a frothing beast below. Ji-un's heart hammered in sync with the downpour as the elevator plummeted, Jae-sung's bulk blocking the doors like a human shield. His hand hovered near his jacket, ready to draw, while the alarms wailed faintly through the vents. A piercing reminder that the penthouse above was no longer safe. "Stay close," he muttered, his scarred face set in grim lines. "Boss'll buy us time. We head to the backup in Mapo, old warehouse district. No tales." She nodded, the taste of Minho's kiss still lingering, desperate, salty with the edge of fear. Her simple jacket clung damply to her skin, the humid air inside the elevator thick and oppressive, carrying the faint metallic tang of the storm. What had started as a quiet act of kindness in an Itaewon alley had spiraled into this, fleeing through Seoul's financial heart, entangled in a syndicate's unraveling web. Love. It felt more like a noose tightening with every block. The lobby erupted into chaos as they burst out, security guards barking into radios, rain-slicked suits scattering under the awning. Jae-sung gripped her elbow, steering her toward a waiting black SUV idling in the valet line, its wipers slashing furiously against the torrent. Tires screeched as they peeled away, merging into the snarled traffic of Olympic Dairo, horns blaring like warnings. Ji-un twisted in her seat, peering through the rear window at the tower receding in the sheets of water. No sign of pursuit yet, but the city lights blurred into streaks, mirroring the blur in her mind. "Why the penthouse?" she asked, voice barely above the engine's roar. "I thought it was secure." Jae-sung's knuckles whitened on the wheel, navigating a sharp turn onto the Riverside Expressway. Until the rats sold us out. Boss suspected someone close, maybe even from Busan days. Yoido crews got moles everywhere now, feeding off our ports like parasites. His eyes flicked to the mirror, scanning for shadows. The rain hammered the roof, a relentless drumbeat underscoring the tension. Mapo loomed ahead, its industrial fringes a maze of abandoned factories and graffiti-strewn walls, far from the polished facade of Yoido, but closer to the gritty underbelly Ji-eun knew. Back in the penthouse, Min-ho moved like a predator cornered, directing his men with clipped commands. Tae-woo barricaded the door with a heavy oak cabinet, sweat beading on his tattooed brow, while two others rigged the security feeds to loop harmless footage. The room, once a bastion of luxury with its panoramic views, now felt claustrophobic, the storm winds rattling the reinforced glass. Min-ho's shoulder throbbed under the fresh bandage, a dull fire from the old wound reopening in the scuffle upstairs, but pain was a familiar ally, sharpening his focus. "Flank the service exit," he ordered, holstering his pistol. "If they breach, make it costly." His mind raced beyond the immediate threat. The betrayal gnawed deeper than any bullet. Park's death, the botched warehouse raid, it all pointed inward, to a trusted lieutenant perhaps eyeing the throne. And Ji-eun. Pulling her into this storm was a risk he hadn't planned, but sending her away felt impossible now. That kiss, her hand on his jaw, it had cracked something in him, a vulnerability he'd buried under layers of Syndicate steel. A muffled explosion rocked the building, flashbang from the lobby, Yoido's corporate thugs announcing their arrival with tactical precision. Gunfire echoed up the stairwell, sharp cracks cutting through the thunder. Min-ho's crew returned fire, the acrid scent of cordite filling the air. He grabbed his burner phone, dialing Jae-sung. "Status?" "Clear so far, Hyung-nim. She's safe, heading to Mapo." Jae-sung's voice crackled over the line, strained. "You." "Handling it. Get her settled. I'll rendezvous at dawn." Min-ho ended the call, slipping the device into his pocket. No time for sentiment. Survival first, then the reckoning. He signaled Tae-woo. "Cover me. I'm going out the balcony." The younger man hesitated, loyalty warring with fear. "Boss, it's suicide. Rain's a sheet. Do it." Authority snapped like a whip, and Tae-woo nodded, bowing his head slightly in deference. Min-ho shouldered open the glass door, the gale slamming into him, soaking his shirt instantly. He rappelled down the fire escape with practiced ease, muscles burning, the city a watery abyss below. Bullets whined past, shattering a window above, but he hit the alley running, vanishing into the storm-swept shadows of Yoido's backstreets. Hours blurred into a haze of evasion. Jae-sung's SUV wove through Mapo's labyrinth, rusted silos from the old textile mills, standing sentinel under sodium lamps, the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and distant kimchi factories. They pulled into a nondescript warehouse on the Han's muddy banks, its corrugated doors groaning open to reveal a dimly lit interior. Crates of contraband stacked high, a few cots for the crew, and a single bulb swinging overhead. Ji-eun stepped inside, shivering as the door clanged shut, sealing out the rain's fury. Jae-sung handed her a towel and a steaming mug of instant coffee, black and bitter. "Boss'll be here soon. Sit tight." He posted guards at the entrances, the men murmuring in low tones about the night's losses. Another lieutenant down, whispers of internal fractures spreading like cracks in ice. Ji-eun paced the concrete floor, her mind a whirlwind. The romance that had sparked over bulgogi and makgeolli now burned hotter, tempered by terror. Min-ho wasn't just a man, he was the axis of this dangerous world, and she'd chosen to orbit it. Footsteps echoed outside and the door creaked open. Min-ho drenched and bruised but whole. His eyes found hers immediately, locking with an intensity that cut through the gloom. "You're okay," she breathed, rushing to him. He pulled her into an embrace, water dripping from his hair onto her shoulder, his body solid and warm against the chill. "Barely." His voice was rough, laced with exhaustion, but his arms tightened, possessive. The crew averted their eyes, heads dipping in quiet respect, the girl who'd saved their boss now a fixture in their shadowed fold. Jae-sung cleared his throat. "Perimeter's secure. What's the play, Hyung-nim?" Min-ho released her reluctantly, guiding her to a cot in the corner. The warehouse hummed with low activity, radios crackling updates from scouts in Itaewon and Busan, the distant rumble of thunder a counterpoint. We root out the traitor. Tomorrow we hit back. Their safe house in Apgujeong. No mercy. His gaze softened on Ji-un, thumb brushing her cheek. But you. This isn't your fight. She met his stare, fire in her eyes. It is now. You think I can walk away after that kiss? After seeing what this does to you? Her hand pressed to his chest, feeling the steady thump beneath the wet fabric, desire flaring amid the peril. The air between them crackled, intimate in the vast space, the rain a curtain veiling their world. He cupped her face, leaning in, lips claiming hers in a kiss fierce and unyielding, passion born of survival, tasting of rain and resolve. The crew busied themselves elsewhere, the hierarchy bending to this raw connection, but as they broke apart, Minho's expression darkened. Love in this life. It's a weapon they can use against us. If they target you, then we fight together. Her words were a vow, fragile yet fierce, as lightning forked outside, illuminating the crates like tombstones. Dawn crept in grey and sodden, the storm ebbing to a drizzle. Minho's phone buzzed, a lead on the traitor, a name from the Busan Old Guard. Betrayal loomed, the Syndicate's bows to Ji-un now laced with the blood of impending war. Their bond, tested in the deluge, deepened, salvation's spark or downfall's fuse, igniting in the heart of Seoul's unforgiving night. The grey dawn light filtered through the warehouse's grimy skylights, casting watery reflections on the concrete floor, where puddles from the night's storm had seeped in. Mapo's industrial sprawl stretched beyond the corrugated walls, abandoned rail yards choked with weeds, the Han River's muddy banks exhaling a faint, briny mist that mixed with the diesel tang of idling trucks. The drizzle persisted, a soft patter on the metal roof, as if Seoul itself wept for the fractures in the dragon's ranks. Ji-un sat on the edge of the cot, her damp clothes clinging uncomfortably, watching Minho as he pored over the burner phone's screen. His face, etched with fresh bruises, was a mask of controlled fury, the golden flecks in his eyes catching the dim bulb's glow. The lead had come from a scout in Busan, Uncle Hwan, a grizzled veteran who'd mentored Minho from the dock's smuggling days, now whispering secrets to Yoido's vipers for a cut of the port profits. Betrayal like this cut deepest. Family turned foe, the Syndicate's iron hierarchy crumbling from within. Minho pocketed the phone, his jaw tightening as he turned to the crew assembled around a scarred wooden table. Jae-sung cracking his knuckles, Tae-woo fidgeting with a knife, and a handful of others nursing black coffee from styrofoam cups. The air hummed with tension, thick as the humid remnants of the storm. "We move at noon," Minho said, his voice steady, commanding. "Apgujeong safe house, Hwan's there. Coordinating with the rivals. We take him alive, make an example, no loose ends." Heads nodded, bows subtle but reverent, the weight of loyalty reasserting itself in the face of the threat. But Ji-un saw the cracks, sidelong glances, the way Tae-woo's fingers trembled. This war wasn't just external, it was devouring them from the core. She rose, stepping closer to Minho, her hand brushing his arm. The touch grounded him, a quiet anchor amid the storm of plans. And after, what if it's not just him? Her voice was soft, but it carried, drawing eyes. In this world of barked orders and hidden blades, her presence was an anomaly, a civilian thread woven into the Syndicate's dark tapestry. Yet they deferred to her because of that alley night. Minho's gaze softened on her, the boss yielding to the man beneath. "Then we rebuild, but you, stay back. Jae-sung, get her to the Gangnam penthouse. It's fortified now. Sweep's done." He cupped her elbow, pulling her aside to a shadowed corner where crates shielded them from the crew's view. The drizzle outside intensified, drumming a urgent rhythm, as if urging them onward. Up close, exhaustion lined his face, but desire flickered in his eyes, raw and unfiltered. "I can't lose you in this mess, Ji-un. What we have, it's the only clean thing left." Her breath hitched, the humid air between them charged. She pressed her palm to his chest. feeling the rapid beat beneath the damp shirt, the dragon tattoo's outline warm through the fabric. Clean. This started with blood in an alley, and now it's my blood too if they come for me. Defiance sparked, but so did need, the pull toward him, forged in vulnerability, now a flame testing the winds of chaos. She leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was fierce, tasting of coffee and resolve, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that belied his world. He broke away first, forehead resting against hers, breaths mingling. You're my weakness, you know that. The girl who stitched me up and made a crew of killers bow. But damn if you aren't my strength too. His thumb traced her lip, the moment intimate, stolen, as thunder rumbled distantly over the river. Passion simmered, but duty called. Hierarchy demanded action. And love, in this life, was a luxury rationed in shadows. Jae-sung cleared his throat from across the room, respectful distance maintained. Wheels up in 30, Hyung-nim, routes scouted, back alleys through Sinsadong to avoid patrols. Minho nodded, releasing her with reluctance. Go, I'll call when it's done. But as Ji-eun followed Jae-sung to the SUV, doubt gnawed. The drive to Gangnam wound through rain-slicked streets, Mapo's grit giving way to the district's sleek avenues, lined with luxury high-rises and steaming street carts hawking hot-tok despite the downpour. Water cascaded from awnings, pooling in gutters that rushed like veins carrying the city's secrets. The penthouse loomed, its doorman waving them through with a deferential nod, Ji-eun now a known face, the orphan girl elevated by mercy. Inside, the space felt hollow without Minho, vast windows framing the storm-lashed skyline, the Han a silver slash below. She paced the marble floors, the air conditioned to a crisp chill that raised goosebumps on her skin. Hours ticked by, the drizzle easing to mist as noon approached. Her phone stayed silent, each passing minute twisting the knot in her gut. Betrayal's shadow loomed. Juan, the mentor turned Judas, unraveling years of blood oaths. Then, chaos erupted. A sharp buzz from the intercom. Agassi, breach! Uido's hitting the Apgujeong site early, ambush! Jae-sung's voice, frantic, cut through before the line went dead. Ji-eun's heart seized, the penthouse alarms blared, red lights pulsing like wounds. She grabbed a coat, slipping out a side door before guards could react, instinct driving her toward the fray, toward him. The cab ride to Apgujeong was a blur of honking horns and wiper blades slashing rain from the windshield. The safe house was a discreet villa, tucked behind high walls in the upscale neighborhood, its Hanok-style roof dripping under the renewed shower. Gunfire cracked the air as she approached on foot, heart pounding, the scent of wet earth and cordite thick. Bodies lay in the manicured garden, dragons and rivals mingled in death, blood washing into the soil. She spotted Minho in the chaos, pinned behind a stone lantern, returning fire with precise shots. Juan knelt nearby, bound and battered, his face a mask of defiance. You think this ends me, boy? The Tigers own the ports now, your empire's dust. Minho's eyes widened as Ji-eun emerged from the shadows, ducking behind a topiary. What the hell are you doing here? He roared over the din, but pride flashed in his gaze amid the fury. Saving you, idiot, she shot back, grabbing a fallen pistol, her hands steady from alley nights and YouTube drills. A rival lunged from the villa's doorway and she fired, the recoil jarring her shoulder, dropping him in a heap. The crew rallied at the sight, heads turning in stunned respect, the hierarchy shifting as the outsider proved her place. Minho surged forward, covering her as they flanked Juan. The old man spat blood, eyes gleaming with venom. She the one, your soft spot? They'll gut her first. But Minho's knee met his chest, silencing him with a crack. The skirmish ended in a haze of smoke and shouts, Uido's remnants fleeing into the rain-swept streets. Minho pulled Ji-eun close amid the wreckage, their embrace slick with rain and relief, lips crashing in a kiss born of survival. Passionate, desperate, the bond unbreakable now. The Syndicate gathered, bows deeper, whispers of her legend spreading, the girl who bowed heads and turned tides. But as sirens wailed in the distance, Minho's face darkened. This isn't over. Juan was just the pawn, the real players deeper pulling strings from the top. Their love, a beacon in the storm, now illuminated greater perils, corruption in high places, a final betrayal that could topple everything. The drizzle cleared to a humid dusk, Sol's lights igniting like warnings as Ji-un clung to him, ready for the endgame. Redemption or ruin, sealed in blood and unbreakable will. The humid dusk settled over Apgujeong like a heavy veil, the rain's remnants turning the air into a steamy haze that clung to skin and blurred the edges of the world. Sirens wailed in the distance, a piercing chorus cutting through the garden's carnage. Bodies strewn amid shattered lanterns and trampled azaleas, the scent of gunpowder mingling with wet soil and blooming night jasmine. Minho's grip on Ji-un tightened, his chest heaving against hers, the kiss lingering like a vow amid the chaos. Blood streaked his shirt, not all his, but the metallic tang grounded her, a reminder that this fragile piece was borrowed time. Jae-sung hauled Uncle Hwan to his feet, the old man's wrists bound with zip ties, his face a swollen mess of defiance and defeat. The crew encircled them, shadows lengthening under the villa's eaves, heads bowed low not just to Minho but to her now, the orphan girl who'd fired the shot that turned the tide. Tae-woo's eyes met hers briefly, a nod of raw respect passing between them, the Syndicate's rigid hierarchy bending like bamboo in the wind. "Get him inside," Minho ordered, his voice gravelly, laced with the exhaustion of a man who'd stared down death one too many times. He steered Ji-un toward the villa's side entrance, away from the approaching lights, his free hand never leaving her waist. The interior was a stark contrast to the opulence outside. Dim tatami rooms scarred by stray bullets, low tables overturned, the faint aroma of spilled soju hanging in the air. They shoved Hwan into a corner, the old man slumping against the wall with a wet cough, his eyes gleaming with venom. "You kids think this fixes it," Hwan rasped, spitting blood onto the floorboards. Rain pattered against the shoji screens, a soft underscore to his words. "The Uido suits, they're just the front. Chairman Lee from the Chaebol board. He's the one bankrolling it all. Wants the ports for his shipping empire, clean and corporate. I've been feeding him intel for months." "You were blind, Minho. Soft." Minho's face hardened, the betrayal slicing deeper than any blade. Chairman Lee, a name whispered in boardrooms, not back alleys. A titan whose influence snaked through Seoul's power corridors, corrupting politicians and syndicates alike. The pieces clicked, the botched warehouse raid, the penthouse breach, Park's death. It wasn't just gang rivalry, it was a corporate purge. Hwan the willing pawn in a larger game. Ji-un's stomach twisted, the weight of it pressing in. She'd pulled Minho from that Itaewon gutter thinking it was chance, but now it felt like fate's cruel joke, thrusting her into a war where love was the ultimate vulnerability. She squeezed his hand, her voice steady despite the tremor. "Then we end it, all of it." Hwan chuckled, a wet, mocking sound. "Her? The alley rat? You'll get her killed, boy. Lee's already got eyes on her. Traced the safe house logs. She's your downfall." Minho lunged, fist connecting with Hwan's jaw in a dull thud, silencing him. Jae-sung dragged the old man away to a back room, the crew murmuring plans. Hit Lee's offices in Uido at midnight, disrupt the flow before it swallowed them whole. But Minho pulled Ji-un aside, into a small alcove where silk cushions muffled the outside world. The humid air wrapped around them, thick with the storm's aftermath, distant thunder rumbling like a warning. "I should have sent you away after that first dinner," he murmured, his forehead against hers, breaths ragged. Bruises shadowed his jaw, but his eyes burned with a fierce intensity, gold flecks catching the lantern light. This life. It's poison. Hierarchy, loyalty. It's all built on sand when someone like Lee pulls the strings. She cupped his face, thumbs tracing the stubble, the scar above his brow, a map of battles fought. Desire coiled tight, passion forged in the fire of survival, but so did fear, the raw ache of knowing one wrong move could sever them. "You think I regret it? Stitching you up? Kissing you in that warehouse? This world tested us, Minho, and we're still here." Her lips brushed his, soft at first, then deepening, a claim amid the ruins. His hands slid to her hips, pulling her close, the heat between them a defiant spark against the encroaching dark. He broke away, voice low and urgent. "Lee's compound, it's fortified. Guards from private firms. But if we take him down, quietly, no traces, the Syndicate stabilize, dragons rise stronger." His thumb grazed her cheek, vulnerability cracking the boss's armor. "Come with me, not as bait, as my equal." The crew reconvened under the villa's dripping eaves, maps unrolled on a low table slick with rain. Midnight came swift, the drizzle resuming as black vans idled in the shadows of Apgujong's manicured lanes. Ji-eun rode shotgun in Min-ho's lead vehicle, the engine's hum vibrating through her bones. The city unfolding in neon-streaked blurs, Gangnam's towers giving way to Yeouido's glassy fortresses, the Han a black ribbon under sodium lights. They breached the compound's perimeter through a service gate, exploiting a blind spot Hwan had unwittingly revealed. Gunfire erupted in controlled bursts, silencers muffling the cracks as dragons took down sentries, the humid night air thick with cordite and fear. Lee waited in his study, a sleek room overlooking the river, surrounded by ledgers and laptops glowing with illicit deals. He was older than she'd imagined, silver hair, tailored suit, eyes cold as the monsoon wind, but cornered, he sneered. "Hayu syndicates are relics," Lee said, hands raised as Min-ho pressed a pistol to his temple. "The future's corporate, clean." Min-ho's voice was steel. "Your future ends here." But Ji-eun stepped forward, her presence a shock to the room, the crew holding position, heads inclined in silent deference. "You targeted us because we wouldn't bend," she said, voice clear, unflinching. "But mercy built this, and it'll bury you." Lee's laugh died as Tae-woo zip-tied him, the evidence, emails, ledgers, seized in a swift sweep. No blood this time, justice through exposure, leaks to prosecutors who'd long eyed the Chaeble's shadows. As they exfiltrated, sirens howled again, but the vans melted into the night, the storm's veil their ally. Back in a fortified safe house on the outskirts of Seoul, a quiet hanok in the countryside hills, far from the urban grind, dawn broke clear for the first time in weeks. The summer humidity lingered, but the air felt lighter, birdsong piercing the mist rolling off distant rice paddies. Min-ho and Ji-eun stood on the Engawa, overlooking the garden where dew-kissed lotuses bloomed. The Syndicate had scattered to regroup, loyalties reaffirmed, Hwan's execution a quiet ritual that sealed the fractures. "You did it," she whispered, leaning into him, his arm around her waist a steady anchor. The dragon tattoo peeked from his collar, no longer a mark of isolation but shared strength. "We did." He turned her to face him, hands framing her face. The kiss slow and deep, passion tempered by peace, desire blooming without the shadow of peril. "The crew. They call you Ani now, bows deeper than mine. You saved more than me that night in the alley." Ji-eun smiled, tears pricking her eyes, the emotional weight of their journey crashing like a receding wave. Orphaned, alone, she'd found not just love, but purpose. In him. In this reformed world where hierarchy yielded to heart. Betrayal's scars remained, but their bond had mended them, salvation woven from the threads of danger. As the sun crested the hills, painting the sky in soft pinks, Min-ho pulled a small box from his pocket, a simple silver ring etched with a subtle dragon and lotus. No grand gestures, just us, in this life or out. She slipped it on. Their foreheads touching, the future uncertain but theirs. Seoul's shadows lingered, but here in the quiet dawn, love had won, not as downfall but as the unbreakable force that made empires bow.